to the cloud.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the North Carolina Zoo. So my name's Chelsea, and Leslie is behind the camera. You'll meet her in just a little bit. And we are here at the North Carolina Zoo, and we have some awesome animals to share with you. So we are doing a Tails and Tales program for you guys for all of the libraries that are around. And we were super excited to be able to create this program for you guys because you in the library are the only ones that get to see this program, which is super exciting. So thank you guys for joining us today, and we are going to be learning about some animal stories. We actually did create a little bit of a story too to go along with the program. So we're going to go ahead and get started reading our little story. So our Tails and Tales animal stories. All right. So every living being has a story. Some of them have their moments of glory. Others haven't had the same chance and have become victims of a circumstance. But good or bad, happy or sad, their stories need to be told. So listen closely to hear their history unfold. For by learning their tale, we can understand the scale of their importance on the earth and what we can do to appreciate their worth. So choose a story and follow the book, Elephants or Wolves. Let's take a look. All right, Leslie, we have to choose elephants or wolves. Which one do you think we should start with?
Wolves.
Wolves. Awesome. Wolves are one of my favorites. And they are super cool and have a lot of stories and all kinds of things around the world. There's lots of wolf stories out there, but I want to talk about a species story. And actually, I'm going to talk with you about a couple of species of wolves. So, Leslie, what kind of wolf do you think of when I just say wolf?
I think of a big wolf that lives like where it's really cold.
Yeah, so maybe does it kind of have this color?
Yes.
Yes.
The gray wolf, right?
The gray wolf.
Oh, gray wolf.
Good job. So the gray wolf is one of the stories I want to tell you guys about. And they are this kind of grayish color. They're more white underneath, darker on top. And they are a very large wolf and do tend to live where it's a little cooler. And they actually have a really cool story in Yellowstone National Park. So if you've ever been to Yellowstone, you might know that there's a lot of different kinds of wildlife there. There's the wolves, there's bison, there's elk, there's foxes, there's bears, beavers, fish, probably some salamanders. There's a lot of animals that live in Yellowstone National Park. But the years and years and years ago, the gray wolves actually wandered off of Yellowstone, right? Nobody told them they had to stay on Yellowstone. And they wandered off of Yellowstone, and they were getting just kind of close to people, not necessarily on purpose, but that's where they were finding food. And maybe they got a little too close to somebody's livestock, they got a little too close to somebody's pets, whatever the case may be. People started hunting them, sometimes even for their pelts or just for fun. But when the wolf population went down and there were no more wolves in Yellowstone, Yellowstone went through a big change because gray wolves are what is known as an apex predator. Leslie, can you help me break down what an apex predator is?
All right. Here are my thoughts, Chelsea.
All right, I'm ready for your thoughts.
Predator. I got you on predator. So predator is an animal that eats another animal, right?
Yes.
Like actively hunts.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And apex.
Oh, apex. I thought I got the whole thing. Apex. That's like the top of something.
Yeah.
Like so the apex of herbs. Is it like a summit? Apex summit of the mountains?
Sort of. So yeah, apex is kind of like top of, when we're talking about an apex predator, top of the food web. So it kind of eats a lot of things, but nothing really eats it. And gray wolves were kind of the apex predator of Yellowstone. So Leslie, if you could pull up this picture that I've got to share with you all. So if you look on the left, you will see um, there's difference in the picture on the left and the right. So the picture on the left is when the wolves were gone from Yellowstone. So there were other predators like coyotes, but coyotes are a lot different. They're a lot smaller, and they're solitary, so they don't have a big pack to take down an animal like an elk. The wolves were the main predators of the elk. So without any wolves around, the elk actually came a lot closer to the stream, and their population kind of boomed, and there's a lot more of them. They were trampling all of the grasses and plants that were near the river. So the river couldn't hold its shape as well, and the water started eroding away the riverbed. And then different scavengers didn't have as much to eat, because wolves are a little wasteful. So they eat what they need, they eat what they want, but they leave a lot behind too. So eagles and vultures and foxes and bears, different animals that would scavenge an old elk carcass, they didn't have that to scavenge anymore. So they kind of moved out of Yellowstone too in search of other food. But if you look at the right side, so people recognized that there was a problem in Yellowstone, that the ecosystem wasn't in balance anymore. They reintroduced the gray wolves back into Yellowstone, and look at how different the ecosystem, how much it changed. So all of these plants are starting to grow back. The river, its path is changing a little bit because the riverbed isn't eroding away as much. So the plants are holding the riverbed in place. Those scavengers are coming back. So there's an eagle in the sky, there's a fox, there's a bear kind of in the background. The elk are still there, but they're pushed back a little bit. There's not quite as many in the area. And we've got beavers. So beavers are pretty cool because not only do they come, they eat all of that vegetation and they build a dam. So the wolves coming back was beneficial to them in that way, but their dam actually slows down that fast moving water in the river and creates habitats for other animals that can't live in that fast moving water. So you can see there's a fish down there that's utilizing that, that beaver's dam as well. So a big change that went through Yellowstone with those gray wolves. You can bring it back to me now, Leslie. Thank you. So here in North Carolina, we actually have our own type of wolf. And it used to stretch all the way down to Texas and all the way up to almost New York. But they actually have a similar story. They were hunted a lot. They look a lot like coyotes. They are the American red wolf. So the red wolf is smaller than the gray wolf. They don't have quite as much of a gray pelt as much as they do a reddish pelt, especially around their ears and around kind of their tails and their legs. Here's a great spot of that kind of reddish color. And so they get mistaken for coyotes a lot because they are similar in color, but there is a size difference. So this is a red wolf skull, and this is a coyote skull. And so you can tell red wolf is a little bit bigger. But like I mentioned, the coyotes cannot control the population as well as the wolves. So the red wolves don't create quite as big of a pack as a gray wolf might. They live in more family packs, but they still work together to bring down large prey like deer. And so the deer here in North Carolina are kind of like the elk were in Yellowstone. They're overpopulated and there's a lot of them. So we kind of need that apex predator. And here in North Carolina, it's the only place that red wolves can be found in the wild. People have kind of found all of the remaining red wolves. There's only about 10 in the wild, maybe even less than that. And they were all moved to Alligator River National Preserve, kind of towards the coast of North Carolina. And there's a lot more in places like zoos under human care where we are breeding them and keeping those genetic populations really strong, so that we can hopefully release them into the wild. And we actually have successfully released puppies into the wild. We take the puppies and put them with wild moms that have already had puppies kind of around the same age. And mom we put them in there when mom is gone. And when mom comes back, she's like, oh, I guess I just miscounted. I have, 8 puppies instead of 6 now. Whatever. And mom takes care of them. So it's super awesome. And Leslie, I think you have a video of 2 of our red wolves we have here to give you a good idea of what they look like. So this is Sassafras, or Sassy for short. And she is a mom, so she just had puppies not that long ago. And Flint is the other red wolf you might see in a little bit. But they, you can kind of see how they might get mistaken for a coyote, but they do look a little bit different and they are bigger. And we're very fortunate to have here at the North Carolina Zoo, we have Chris Lasher, who is actually the coordinator for the Red Wolf SSP, our species survival plan. So he actually makes sure that all of the red wolves and all of the facilities are kind of breeding and having healthy, strong babies, and he's playing red wolf matchmaker, basically. And so we're very lucky to have him here at the North Carolina Zoo, and keeping that nice strong genetic population. But we're gonna wrap it up for red wolves now because we have some more critters that we want to share with you guys. So, but we've got to get our book back out first. Got to finish our book, right? All right. So the second story follows some native Carolinians. Would you like to hear first about the reptiles or the amphibians? What do you think, Leslie? Who should we go with?
I don't know. What should we talk about? What do you want to talk about, Chelsea? I
mean, my favorite is kind of the reptiles, if I'm being honest.
Hi.
I know you're all about those, but we'll get there. We'll get there, right? Okay. So I've got a friend I want you guys to meet. And he's a favorite among many people here at the zoo. Mr. Vanderbilt. This is Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt is an eastern box turtle. And he's got a really cool personal story. So with the red wolves, we talked about more of a species type of story. His story is personal to him. So he actually used to live in the wild, and he was found by somebody because they noticed something wasn't quite right with him. If you look at his mouth, you might notice that he is missing the top part of his beak. And that's kind of important for him. And because he kind of looks grumpy, right? He's got almost like this frown look. The top part of his beak actually helps him eat. And without that top part of his beak, his bottom half of the beak keeps growing. So somebody found him, they brought him into the zoo, and we decided that he couldn't really be released back into the wild because he couldn't eat properly with his top beak missing. We also, here at the zoo, for his care, we have to Dremel down his bottom beak. And a Dremel is, it's actually a tool that you see used a lot with dogs to trim their nails. That's kind of grinds their nails rather than cutting it. It grinds them down. And that's what we use with him. But his beak is made out of the same stuff as our fingernail and our hair, so it doesn't hurt him. But it is necessary to for his care to get that Dremel down. Now they think that he was hit either by a car or maybe a lawnmower. We're not really sure because he did come from the wild, but it is a really common injury with box turtles to be hit by a car. So if I'm going to challenge you guys, if you are in your car and you are driving down the road and you find a little turtle like Vanderbilt in the road, if he is facing this way, should you take him the way that he's going, or should you bring him back where he just came from? Let's pretend he just stepped out on the road. He's not far in the road. What do you think, Leslie? Can you help me out with that?
My gut says if he just stepped out in the road, you want to put him back like right where he was at the road, right? But I don't think that's true. Maybe the way he's facing, because that's where he wants to go, right?
Right. Like he knows where he wants to go. So box turtles actually have a GPS in their head, little tiny turtle GPS, and it tells him where he needs to go. Box turtles only range about a mile from where they're born. They kind of stay within a mile of where they're born, and they don't go a whole lot of places. So imagine if you were chugging along on your way home somewhere, you knew exactly where you were, but somebody else found you and said, you know what, I think you would have more fun over here, and I'm going to pick you up and take you over here because this is more fun. And they drop you somewhere and you have no idea where they just dropped you. That would be scary, right? Like it wouldn't make me feel very comfortable. So we don't want to do that to the box turtles. We want to make sure that they know where they are. So if you ever find one in the middle of the road, you can help them. Just make sure that you're safe, and have an adult with you. But you can pick them up, take them the way he was going, because even though where he came from might look nicer, maybe there's a pond over there, lots of trees, lots of woods, he knows where he's going, and he's going to keep trying to get there. So if you take him back and put him where he was, he's just going to turn around and keep going over the road where you just came from. So that is Vanderbilt's story, and a fun way that you can help box turtles. But I know we have lots of questions that commonly get asked about Mr. Vanderbilt. So Leslie, can you help me with some of the questions?
Oh, I have lots of questions.
Okay.
Okay. The TV tells me they can come out of their shells. Is that correct?
Well, so the TV lies to us.
Not the TV.
I know, but if we listen to TV, then he should also have like a little dresser in there and like a bed and lamps and stuff, right? And an area rug. He has a very nice humble home in there, right? He's as far out of his shell as he's gonna get. So if everybody takes their hand, reaches it back behind them and feel all those little bumps that run down the middle of your back, that's your spine. And his shell is actually a modified spine and ribs. So his spine goes down the center of his shell, and he's got those ribs that come off to the side. And just like we can't leave our spine behind and go on wacky fun adventures, he can't do that either. I know it's disappointing, but I'd rather not see a naked turtle running around anyways, right? If a turtle were ever out of its shell, it would not be alive. That's not a good thing because they are attached to their shell. Are there any other questions?
Yes. What does he eat? Did you already ask me that?
I did not.
Well, I mean, do not ask me.
So he is an omnivore. So just like people, we eat some meat, we eat some vegetables. He kind of does the same thing. But in Vanderbilt's world, when we talk about meat, we're not really talking about steak. We're talking more about bugs and insects and earthworms and things like that. Earthworms tend to be one of their favorites. And as babies, they eat a little bit more of those insects and stuff. And as they get older, they eat more plants. Any other questions?
What's up with his eyes?
What's up with his eyes?
Yeah, they're like bright red.
They are bright red. Aren't they pretty?
They are very pretty.
So
He's
Vanderbilt,
I mean,
so Vanderbilt has these bright red eyes, and that's because he is a male. So male box turtles are usually a little bit brighter in color. They have bright red eyes or bright yellow eyes. They have a little bit brighter legs. Now it depends on the box turtles. Sometimes the legs are a little bit brighter. Sometimes they're more orange or yellow. And sometimes even the shell is a little bit brighter in color. But the females are much, much duller. Their eyes are usually dull yellow, dull brown, and most of their body is brown too. And that's because they sometimes carry eggs, right? So they're kind of camouflaging and blending into that ground to make sure that that they're blended in and that their babies are safe.
okay, last question.
Okay.
Why isn't he hiding?
Good question. So Vanderbilt's been with us for a long time, and he's kind of used to people. If he was scared, he would close up completely up in his shell, and he would look like this. So there's no turtle in this shell. This is just a shell, but he would look exactly like this. No arms out, no legs, no tail. because he's got a front door. So he might not have furniture, but he's got a front door. So there's a hinge, that's quite literally what it's called, right here, that closes up this part of his bottom shell, and he can close up entirely. And that's why they're actually called box turtles, because they can box themselves up completely. But luckily he's used to us. He likes to explore. He's interested in things going on around him. So we're very lucky to have him. But I'm going to go ahead and put Mr. Vanderbilt up. We have some more friends, hopefully, to see.
Yeah, I'll read the next step. So you're going back, right? Right. Okay. So we talked about eastern box turtle. So next it says, we have 2 stories down, but many more to go. Even though we've learned so much already, there's always more to know. So let's go. We're going to talk about elephants now. All right, so elephants. Now this story kind of goes a little bit like the wolf story that Chelsea told. So once again, hi, I'm Leslie. I've been behind the camera. But elephants, when you think of elephants, Chelsea, what do you think?
I think kind of these big, graceful creatures that they don't seem to be in a hurry to go anywhere. They're very pretty.
Mm-hmm.
They're majestic.
Agreed. Yes. Agreed. Yeah, those are the things that I think of too. These big, huge, beautiful animals. We don't get to see them in North America, so like it's just amazing and magical when you see them. But what about if I were to tell you that African elephants are sometimes deemed as a nuisance? I know that seems strange because over here in America, since we don't work around them and don't see them very often, we kind of can just see them for the big, beautiful things that they are. But if I were to say a coyote, you might have a different thought. And it's very similar. So coyotes in the United States kind of get a bad rap because they can get involved in your livestock. Sometimes they'll eat the livestock. And so people consider them nuisance. And that was also, like Chelsea was saying, with the wolves, they were scary, they were eating big prey. And so people were hunting them. Now in Africa, there are farmers that put out their crop, and that is their livelihood. That is what they are able to support their family and their community with. So it is incredibly important to them that their crop, that they have a good harvest. But elephants, because they're so big, they can march right straight through a fence, all the area that is protected for that farm, and eat a lot of the farmers' food and their crop and their harvest. And then this is where that human wildlife conflict comes in for the farmers, the local farmers, and the elephants. The farmers are getting mad because the elephants are destroying their crop. And so they would harm or hurt and sometimes kill the elephants. And when they were trying to kill the elephants, sometimes people were being killed because they were getting in the way. And so this wildlife conflict was something that needed to be looked at and fixed. So some people in Africa, and then us in the North Carolina Zoo became a part of it. There was an initiative and a conservation effort to start collaring the elephants so that they could tell where they were at any given point. Here's the thing, we don't have to collar all of them, which is nice because look at this collar. Chelsea, I'm gonna need your help.
All right, I got you.
Okay. This big old collar is an elephant collar. It's about, I would say about 35 pounds. But if you're an elephant and you weigh like 10,000 to 15,000 pounds, this is not that big. So this collar is what they're able to put on one elephant of the herd. Chelsea, what elephant do you think that is?
Well, let's see. There's, every time I see a nature documentary of a herd of elephants, there's always one that seems to be kind of out front, but also kind of like watching over the rest of the herd. So I'm going to say that was probably the leader, and they just put the collar on the leader.
Yeah, great job. So on the leader. Now with elephants, it's a matriarch, which means that it's led by the oldest female. So what they're able to do is they're able to take a helicopter and fly around. So when people from the North Carolina Zoo are over there, like our chief of animal medicine and animal health care, Dr. J.B. Minter, has been able to go over there and worked with rangers. And they fly around, find the herds, then they're able to dart them with an anesthesia, something that'll put them to sleep. And then they're able to really quickly, very, very quickly, put that collar on the elephant. And it kind of looks exactly like that. You can see how little it is compared to the elephant, but yet it was massive compared to us. And then once that collar goes on, there's radio telemetry is used, and they're able to tell the local farmers where those elephants are at any given time. And that means that the rangers can say, hey, local farmer, now is a perfect time to grow your crops and then harvest. Or they can say, oh, the elephants are coming close to us. Now is not a good time. And this has been so successful that there have been very few deaths based on this specific human wildlife conflict. And so we've been helping with it and partnering with people in Africa with it for about 20 years now. And it's been so successful. We've been really excited to be part of this effort to help save this magical, majestic animal. So before we let you go and start our book again, I wanted to show you one of our elephants that we have here at the North Carolina Zoo. So Chelsea, go ahead and bring up that video for us. This is Cesar. Now, Cesar is our oldest African elephant. And he is a pretty amazing animal. He's very big. He is not the biggest we have, actually, but you can see those giant tusks that he has. And those tusks and that trunk and the whole elephant is so incredibly important to the habitat that they're found. They are what we call a keystone species. So if you think about an ark made of stones, the very top stone is the keystone species, and it is what kind of keeps the whole entire arc together. So if elephants are being hurt by this human wildlife conflict or being poached as well, then the less elephants that there are, the more the environment that they are part of will kind of become less healthy. It'll get out of balance, like Chelsea was talking about with the wolves. So these elephants are incredibly important for changing the habitat that they're in, using those big tusks and their big powerful bodies to move trees, to move vegetation, and to keep their habitat and environment in a healthy balance. All right, Chelsea, I think we're ready to move on. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So we have, you can bring it back to me. All right, you ready? So the story is not over. We've only just begun. We have another tale to share. So let's have some more fun. Well, this says reptile or amphibian, Chelsea, and we've already met a reptile. So I'm thinking it's amphibian time. Yeah! So amphibians are also really important for the environment. I mean, every animal is really important to its environment because every animal fits a specific niche or niche. But I wanted to talk to you about a specific species at the North Carolina Zoo and in North Carolina that we kind of help take care of. And that's the Carolina gopher frog. First and foremost, we gotta review our second grade curriculum and remind ourselves of what their life cycle is. All right, Chelsea, you ready to help me out with this?
I'll do my best.
Okay, so frog starts as?
Well, most frogs start as eggs.
Eggs, yes, those squishy eggs. Then what comes out of the egg, Chelsea?
Little bitty tadpoles.
Little bitty tadpoles. And then they start to grow their back legs, and then they start to grow their front legs, and then their body starts changing shape. They start to grow lungs instead of having gills. They get a different mouth part. Their skeleton completely changes, and they become, and then they kind of look in between a tadpole and the last stage. Do you know what the next stage is?
It's my favorite stage, Leslie. Of course I do. The froglet.
The froglet. So it kind of looks like an adult frog, but it still has a little bit of a tail. And then it becomes a complete adult. Now, this stage, all these different, this metamorphosis, these 4 stages that they go through, take a lot of time. And sometimes it can take, like the Carolina gopher frog, it can take 2 years for it to become an adult. Now, I have a Carolina gopher frog with me, but before I show him to you, I got to wet my hands with some reverse osmosis water. I don't really need to do that because I actually don't think I'm going to bring him out because he's a little bit small, but I may have to. And in here, did you make some noise? He made a little noise. We have Biggie, our Carolina gopher frog. Let's see if you can get a nice view of him. There he is. So Biggie, the Carolina gopher frog, actually, we can just do this. Perfect. There he is. The Carolina gopher frog lives in the sand hills, which is where there's a lot of longleaf pine. And unfortunately, longleaf pine forests are kind of dying out. They're not being able, they're being forested, they're being torn down, but also they need fire. And there's not as much natural fire anymore. That's why there's prescribed burns around places. And the pine cone of the longleaf pine needs fire to be able to open up and release its seeds. And if there's no longleaf pine forests, then there's not as much gopher frog. Here's the cool thing. Frogs and amphibians, their skin is so special. It has the ability to breathe and to take in water. And so if there's anything wrong with the water that they are part of, they'll be the first to get sick or die off. And so it's really important to make sure that there are enough frogs left in their habitat so we can keep that ecosystem in balance. And unfortunately, the Carolina gopher frog is low, its numbers are kind of low. So what the North Carolina Zoo does, I have a little video that we can show you as well. But what they do is they take some of the eggs and then they bring them back to the zoo and they grow them, kind of take care of them until they become adults, and then they're re-released. So this video is going to kind of show you that a little bit, and it's pretty cool. And I'm going to kind of talk through it. Perfect. So here are the frog eggs. That's that first stage in life cycle, and they're brought back to what we call mesocosms. And you can see in the wild, less than 5% of the frogs get through metamorphosis. So we only take about the same amount that's eaten. Here's a frog with little legs. I don't know if you can kind of see it. So it's in this mesocosm or mesocosm, and we're giving it a safe place for it to grow. And then the next one that this is actually Keeper Shup is showing is one that has multiple legs. And then this is basically the last step before it becomes that froglet. It still has a pretty long tail, so it's not quite to froglet stage. But as that tail is absorbed back into the body, it's kind of food for it. And so it is able to sustain off of that as it absorbs it back into its body. And then what happens is it kind of changes. And this is Chris Shup kind of talking a little bit about the things that he's showing in the mesocosm. And here is the last stage of their life cycle. This is a young adult frog. And these are the ones that we're able to re-release back into their natural habitat. So when we do that, we are able to give more frogs a head start to their life. And it's called head starting because of that. So because the North Carolina Zoo is able to take some of these eggs that normally would be eaten and then bring them back, take care of them, and re-release them, we're able to help the gopher frog live longer and hopefully the species to stay around longer. The one tricky thing is that we recently found that there's another thing that's kind of taking over the gopher frog instead of the longleaf pine forests being kind of not able to reproduce with all that fire. And that is fire ants. So currently, we're actually working to see how we can help the gopher frogs by lessening the amount of fire ants in their habitat. And we're still working on that one. So that is a story that you'll have to stay tuned in the future to hear more about. All right, so back to our story, Chelsea.
Ready.
We're ready? Okay, so we have the end is drawing near. But first, a decision you must make. Would you like to hear about bears or would you like to meet a snake? I want to learn about bears, Chelsea.
Okay.
Can we learn about bears?
It sounds like you've made the decision.
Yes!
We're learning about bears.
Yay!
So bears are one of my favorites. They're so cute. I'm gonna be honest, they're big. They can sometimes be scary, but they're cute. And I want to tell you guys another individual story about a bear that we actually have here at the North Carolina Zoo. His name is Tomo. And here in a little bit, Leslie's going to pull up a video of Tomo so you can see how just awesome he is. But Tomo actually has a really interesting story. So he actually came from Yellowstone National Park. I know I'm all about Yellowstone today, right? The wolves and the bear. But he was a nuisance animal. So we've talked a lot about nuisance animals today, right? But he was an animal that he kept getting too close to people. He kept maybe getting into trash cans. He was expecting food from people, and it put him and people in danger because grizzly bears are big. Tomo is a grizzly bear. They're very big, they're strong, and if he wants that food bad enough, he's gonna go through whatever means he needs to get to that food, even if that means killing a person. So it is dangerous for the people, but it's also dangerous to the bear as well, because one, he's relying on a food source that may not be constant. So he's relying on people to give him food or that trash can. But if that trash can goes away, if people stop coming to Yellowstone, like in 2020, all of the national parks got shut down. So he lost that food source of ravaging through trash cans, right? So so it's not good for him to rely on a food source that may not be there all the time. And it's also dangerous to him because when people see a giant grizzly bear coming up to them, they get scared, right? They're going to throw things at him. They're going to do things to him to make him go away. So we didn't want any of that for Tomo. And rather than deciding that he didn't need to be in this world anymore, we brought him here to the North Carolina Zoo instead. So he lives a really happy life here. He's got enrichment and he's got food and he's got all of his favorite things. So Leslie, if you will pull up a video of Tomo. There's Tomo's butt. So he is working on some enrichment he's got right now. And enrichment is used to elicit some of his natural behaviors. So rather than, playing in trash cans and stuff, he's doing something that he would naturally do, flipping that log over, rolling it around, looking for food in the log. In the wild, that might be bugs or different critters that might be living around the log. In this circumstance, it was an apple that his keepers had put in the log for him. But we do try to make sure that our animals here act as they would in the wild. We don't want them acting as pets because they're not pets, right? They deserve to be treated and respected as wild animals. So it's so much fun to watch him interacting and just kind of being a real bear, right? Instead of relying on people out in the wild and putting both him and people in danger. So Tomo just has a really cool story. Can you think of any questions, Leslie, about Tomo?
Yeah, he's old, right?
He is old.
So
So he doesn't look his best right now, right? So
He's very lumpy.
He's very lumpy, and that's partially because he's an old bear. So Tomo is about 31 years old.
Wow.
In the wild, they don't live quite as long because they have to worry about things like diseases. They have to worry about finding food. If they get sick, there's no vets around to make them healthy again. But they don't have to worry about any of that under human care. They kind of live a stress-free life almost, at least when it comes to like bad stresses, like finding food and all of that. So he's got vet care, he's got food, and he never has to wonder where his next meal's coming from. So they do live a little bit longer under human care. And he does look a little rough right now, but it is shedding season for him. So if you come visit our zoo in the wintertime, he's gonna have this nice, beautiful, luscious brown coat. But he's shedding right now, so he looks he looks a little rough, but he's cooler, which is nice for him. One of his favorite spots to sit is actually underneath the waterfall that he's got in his habitat. So he likes to be cool. You think of any other questions, Leslie? We might have about bears.
What are the bears in North America?
Ooh, good question. So in North America, we have 3 different types of bears. We've got the American black bear, which you can actually find here in North Carolina. We've got the grizzly bear, kind of more out west and up north. And then we also have polar bears, which are way up north, also like Canada, Alaska, but that's still all North America. But so around here in North Carolina, a lot of times people see kind of brown bears and think that they're grizzly bears. But black bears can actually be a variety of colors. So they can be black, obviously, but then they can also be brown. They can even be almost a reddish or blonde color. And they can even be white. Now, white isn't super common, but it's super special when you do see a white one because they actually call them spirit bears when you find a white black bear, which is pretty cool. All right. Well, let's get back to our book then, right? So we saw our grizzly bears. All right. Last but not least, we have one more feature, so stick around to hear about yet another creature. Leslie, are you ready for the last creature?
I have a wonderful creature for you all to see. It may take me a second to get him out, but this is a snake if you saw the picture on the book. And if you're a little bit nervous about snakes, the best thing about this program is that it is virtual. So Freckles, can hear you. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna he's a big snake, so I'm gonna kind of see if he'll get around my waist. Oh, good job, buddy. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of move this down a little bit. All right, there we go. So this is Freckles. Freckles, please don't put yourself around my neck. Thank you. One thing that Freckles is doing that a lot of people get nervous about with snakes is that they have to wrap around you. And he's wrapping around the kind of warmest parts of me. So that's why he goes towards the neck. They can see heat. So he sees underarms, he sees neck, and that's where heat kind of escapes a lot from your torso up. And I'm kind of like a friend tree. So he's just kind of lightly holding on to me as a person, but he's not really squeezing me at all. So I don't feel in any danger. And this last story that we're going to talk about today is a personal story about Freckles, this snake. Not just about snakes as a whole, but we'll talk a little bit about snakes anyways. But the story of Freckles is a story about pet ownership. And people can have snakes as pets. And I even say if you really want to learn about them and you want to know how to take care of them properly and find the proper resources, then snakes are a great pet to have. But you really have to get some great research in there because there aren't as many people with snakes as pets as there are dogs and cats. So there aren't as many vets out there. There aren't as many places that you can buy them or get them from a good place Or also, there's not many places that sell all the parts that you would need. And so because of that, they are a true exotic pet. And bunnies is an exotic pet too. Just to kind of give you two ends of the spectrum. So Freckles was actually somebody's pet. And that person, when they had the pet, we assume they set up the environment for Freckles. And one thing that you have to do with reptiles in specific is you have to give them the appropriate light. They need to have UV light and they need to have heat that comes from lamps so that they can grow properly and so that their scales can be proper as well on their body. They also are called ectotherms. With Chelsea, can you help me with ectotherm?
Well, therm sounds kind of like thermometer.
Yes.
So I'm going to say temperature or heat or
correct.
Something like that when it comes to therm.
Yes.
Ecto's a little bit harder, but I've seen Ghostbusters, right? Okay.
Ectoplasm, right?
Ectoplasm. And that's on the outside. So
right.
I'm going to say ecto has something to do with the outside.
Exactly. So ecto means outside, therm means temperature. And then when you put those together, they get their temperature or their heat from outside, an ectotherm. And a lot of time people would use the word cold-blooded, but that's not as what we would say scientifically correct, because think about it this way. If a snake like Freckles was sitting out in the 100-degree heat, which they very much enjoy, would their blood literally be cold? No. So because of that, ectotherm is a little bit more correct, but people will know what you mean when you say cold-blooded. So they are ectotherms. They need to get their temperature from heat lamps and UV lights. They need to get the minerals and nutrients that kind of come from UV lights. That light helps them grow properly. And so if they are too close to those lights, they can accidentally burn themselves, which is what happened to my friend Freckles. Let's see if we can find his little burn. You'll notice right here, it's kind of white. It's kind of white and the scales look a little bit different. You can kind of see that. And that is actually a burn, a really old burn. And so what happened, we think, is the person that had Freckles as a pet maybe accidentally wasn't paying attention or put the lights too close to him and he burned himself. And if you think about it, scales are a lot like your fingernails, so you don't have as much feeling in your fingernails as you do like on your finger and your skin. So they don't always feel it fast enough to be able to get out of the way. And sometimes they'll just sit there and say, oh, this is nice and warm. And then it's kind of like, I didn't realize how warm it was. Just like me, when I go outside, I get burned by the sun all the time because I have really pale skin. So when sometimes I'll be sitting out in the sun and I'll say, oh, I'm fine. I get it and I'm bright red. So he got a pretty bad burn. And this is one of the things that the person that had this snake did as a really good pet owner. And that was they found somebody who knew how to take care of a snake and asked if they'd be willing to take the snake. What they didn't do, which is not good pet ownership, is release it out into the wild. That's actually a problem in Florida right now with reticulated pythons and ball pythons, because the habitat, especially like the Everglades, is really great for them. And so people were releasing them out into the wild, and now they're an invasive species and they're kind of taking over areas that other snakes kind of live in. So the person, we thank them very much that they went and took Freckles to a vet, and then the vet contacted the North Carolina Zoo, and the North Carolina Zoo had the ability to take in Freckles because we actually had a Macklot's python that had died a little bit before then named Mackie. So we were very excited to get a new Macklot's python, Freckles, and he's been here since. So pet ownership is incredibly important, and Freckles is a prime example of being able to do your research and knowing how to properly take care of an exotic or even just a dog or a cat as a pet. I know that there are probably some questions out there. So Chelsea, are there any quick questions that we think that our friends would want to know?
Well, is he poisonous?
Great question. Is he poisonous? So he is not poisonous. And in fact, I would not be holding a snake that is poisonous or venomous like this. Here's the hard thing, okay? Let me tell you. We used to be able to say no snakes are poisonous, but then we kind of found some snakes that were poisonous, but it's very, very few. So most snakes are, if they are kind of have the ability to have a toxin, they are venomous. And here is what kind of the teeth look like in a venomous snake. Sorry for the broken piece of plastic. They have these nice long fangs. So venomous animals, they have kind of like a delivery system. They inject the poison into the body. Think your bees, think your lionfish, cone snails, most snakes. They have a delivery system. Poison is something that kind of the whole entire body is, or they sweat it out or secrete it either through a certain pore or a certain gland, or it's their whole entire body. So think of your poison dart frogs, think of your poison ivy. And that you just need to either touch it, eat it, or you need to kind of rub up against it and ingest it. So our joke is usually don't go around licking and eating animals that you don't know. I think all of you won't do that, but here's what more, not Griffin. Griffin is another snake. Freckles, here's kind of what Freckles' teeth look like. So he does have some nice big scary teeth, but not the big fangs of a venomous animal. So nope, not venomous, completely harmless snake, but they do have the ability to eat meat with those nice big sharp teeth. What else do you think, Chelsea, they want to know?
What does he eat?
Oh, great question. So what does he eat? The reason snakes are so great to the environment is they are amazing pest control. Kind of like when we were talking about the wolves were kind of able to keep the elk in equilibrium. These guys are able to keep the rodent population in kind of a nice equilibrium, or they at a level that's best for the environment. So they eat mostly rodents, maybe some bigger animals every once in a while if they're a really big snake like an anaconda. And one of the neatest things is how they're able to eat. So they have those nice sharp teeth that point backwards, like you saw my my little thing over here, my model. Thank you, Leslie. Brain, it's not working today. My little model that you see. But their jaw is different than ours. So if you think of your jaw and you touch right here in the middle, that's your what? What is this, Chelsea?
That looks like your chin.
This is my chin, yeah. So snakes don't have a chin. They just have a jaw that goes on this side and a jaw that goes on this side. And so it can actually open up wide like this. And then they have an extra bone in the back that allows their head to open up really wide like this. So they can not only wide this way, but they can also do wide that way, which allows them to swallow those animals whole, which is pretty amazing. And they can eat anything that's up to 3 times the size of their head. Pretty amazing. That's like if you had a basketball for like, all in one gulp, right? All right, what else do we want to know, Chelsea?
So a minute ago when you had him close to the camera, he was kind of sticking his tongue out. What was he doing?
Oh yes, my friend Freckles, he's all like sticking his tongue out trying to be mean at you, right? Like, rude snake. No, just kidding. That's his ability to smell. So he sticks out his tongue and then it picks up on all the little particles, scent particles in the air. Let's see if he'll kind of do it again. He's very interested in something else. And he has a forked tongue, kind of like how we have 2 nostrils. So if you take a nice deep breath, sometimes you can smell something more on one side of you than on the other. And then you know, oh, the smell's coming from that way. Well, it's the same with the forked tongue. if he's able to get more scent particles on one side of the tongue, then he knows that that's the direction that the smell is coming from. And that could either be a mouse, that could be a person. And so he can know which way he wants to go towards or away from. Now, what they do is they bring the tongue into their mouth, and then there's a little kind of like hole organ at the top of their face called the Jacobson's organ. And that's actually where they do the smelling, is they put the tongue in there and then the smelling happens there. So, hi, Betty. Sometimes I look down at him, he's very cute. So yeah, so their tongue is just a way to help with smelling, but they can also see heat, like I said. So that's going to be a better way for them to see a mouse, is it's going to shine up bright, like orangey red when they see a mouse compared to the rest of the world around the mouse, which would be more of a blue or purple color. Any other quick questions?
I can't think of any more.
One thing I did want to show you before we wrap it up is that snakes, one thing that's really neat about snakes is that they shed their whole entire skin at once, and it kind of gives you a nice big visual of what they look like when you see the shed that's left behind. And this is actually Freckles' shed. So if we were able to really look at it, we could find where those scales are a little bit different from its burn. And those scales will probably never turn out how they're supposed to, like kind of look how they're supposed to. You can see it right here. Those scales will probably always look different for the rest of his life, but we are able to give him the best care that we are here at the North Carolina Zoo to make sure that it stays healed and that he stays nice and healthy. All right, friends. Well, I hope you had a wonderful time hanging out with us, learning about some tales, your stories of animals. Oh, we got to finish our book, right? So what I hope, friends, is that from what you learned today, you'll make a pledge to help save wildlife. So you can see right here, hope you pledge with me to help save wildlife, because we live with wildlife. We share the earth with all of the wild animals and all of the wonderful plants that are part of it. And we have to work together with them to keep our earth nice and healthy, whether that's being a good pet owner, whether that's learning about ways to help take care of animals, like with the turtle crossing the road, or also supporting places that do great conservation work, just like your watching this video today helps support the North Carolina Zoo and our conservation efforts. We hope you enjoyed having a wonderful time with us today. And there are so many animals. Like I said, we'll read the rest of the book. I kind of already gave it away a little bit, but there are so many animals I need your help defending. Would you pledge with me to give all the creatures a happy ending? So thank you for joining us at the North Carolina Zoo. We had a fun time and we hope you did too. Come for a visit and meet some animal friends and learn about the many others. We need your help to defend. Thank you so much, friends. We enjoyed hanging out, and we hope you have a wonderful day and hope you can visit us sometime at the North Carolina Zoo. Bye.